back live. I've been gone for a little bit, doing a little touring. As you know, I tour quite a bit, so I just came back from last 2 weeks. Rocky Mount, North Carolina 1 week, and I was in Cleveland, Ohio, over at what they call the Buckeye Fest at League Park. So hey, it was great. It was great. Had a chance to get out there and talk about what I know about Cleveland baseball and connect that with the Negro Leagues. Also took my trumpet along and was able to, they had 3 baseball games, so I played the Star Spangled Banner 3 times that day. Even got a chance to throw in, take me out to the ball game. So, but tonight we're back live. I hope you guys haven't missed me too much, but I missed quite a few things. I think the last time I was on was like Friday night, and today is Tuesday. So I missed quite a few things. I'm looking, things that happened on the 21st. Let's see, then it's the 20th. Oh man, so anyway, so we're gonna jump right in here and catch up for today. So today is gonna be baseball that happened September the 23rd, we're gonna pick the different years, but today is September the 23rd, 2025. So let's jump right in there. There'll be some people joining us. I'm gonna try to keep it down to about 15 minutes tonight. Just trying to get everything going again. So let me straighten myself out here. So let's go to the first thing, because I always like to throw out something is, this is this day in Black baseball history, African American baseball history, how you want to title it. So I actually try to start things maybe around 1900 and then go right up to modern day. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so September the 23rd, 1901, and the West Virginia Wonders slaughtered the Barbers 40-6 in a game played in Martinsburg, West Virginia. The Wonders laced 19 hits, and the Barbers made 26 errors. That's got to be some kind of record right there. And star players for the Wonders are Joe Green, William Ford, and Arthur Fisher. And you probably haven't heard of these teams, teams like the West Virginia Wonders, but there were, in every town, there were teams that could draw the attention of the public, and people would pay to see them play. Small towns all over America, anywhere where Black people had enough people to put together a team, there was always some good ball players. And African American baseball history has been vastly underrated for generations for the contributions of so many talented athletes that played in regions that never rose to prominence. Some of these guys wouldn't even leave home because they had a job, and so, or they had a family. So if you have a family, you're not going to go anywhere. And if you got too many children, you really can't go anywhere out going around with some of these teams. Like at that particular time would have been teams like the Cuban Giants or Cuban X-Giants or something like that, who were traveling around the country because the money wasn't that great. The opportunity was good, but you were limited as how high you could go. And then the only thing was you played during the summer, and then you had to come back home and look for a job in the wintertime, and some guys just couldn't do that. So many outstanding players never got out of their community. So when I look at a game like this, man, this is a big score. If you can imagine being at that game 40-6. Now, I coached for 35 years. I don't think anyone ever scored. I think one time we had 20 some odd runs scored in a game against us, but I never saw 30, and I definitely never saw 40. So this is kind of a unique situation. So anyway, I thought I'd mention that. So let's go to another one. Let's jump up to, we're gonna jump about 21 years. September the 23rd, 1922. Richard Whitworth of the Chicago American Giants suffered a broken left leg and possible internal injuries when an accident occurred on the National Road 3 miles from the city. And that was in Indianapolis, Indiana. He was taken to Providence Hospital in Indianapolis. So who was Richard Whitworth? I like to talk about him. I talk about him often because I knew his son. His wife also, she passed away right before I started doing research, but I knew many people who knew her. And they lived in Kansas City, Kansas. Now, he was originally born in St. Louis, but somewhere along the way, his family moved to Kansas City, Kansas. And of course, I interviewed a guy by the name of Fred Langford many years ago. Fred Langford was 90 years old when I met Fred, and Fred had started out playing ball with Dick Whitworth. Also, Wilbur Bullet Rogan was on the team as well, and there was a team called the Palace Colts, who was a guy named Fred Palace on the team. He ran a fish market there on 5th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. And so that's where they got their start. And so Dick Whitworth is somebody that I like to talk about. And in my 1992 book, The Negro Baseball League's Photographic History, I featured him prominently. So he's just someone I like to talk about. He was a great pitcher, and played started out with the Palace Colts, of course, and they were a youth baseball team. Then he graduated to the Kansas City, Kansas Giants, and from there, Chicago Union Giants, and eventually made it to Andrew Rube Foster's Chicago American Giants, and he was a star pitcher there. As a matter of fact, at one time, he was Rube's best pitcher. And of course, there was the combination of Dick Whitworth and Frank Whitware. Sometimes that gets people confused, but they were two great pitchers. Whitware from Girard, Kansas, and of course, Richard Whitworth from Kansas City, Kansas. So yeah, a lot of Kansas in that particular mix there. So anyway, that's the guy I like to talk about. Like I said, I talk about him often. How he grew up in St. Louis, and let's see, what else do I talk about on him? Okay, so he had this accident, and when he had the accident, that pretty much ended his career as a great legendary pitcher. Now, he did make a comeback. Years later, he was out with the Gilkerson Union Giants playing up until the 1930s. So that's Richard Dick Whitworth. And if you follow the Chicago American Giants, I guarantee you, his name is going to come up. All right. So a very light complected guy, tall guy too. And I've seen a picture of him later on where he stayed around Kansas City till he got well, and he played with a team called the Montgomery Ward's Monitors. And of course, the Monitor was really a custodian at that time. So let me get some for water here. We're going to go to the next one. It's going to be Wilbur Bullet Rogan. Okay. Wilbur Bullet Rogan. Let's go with this one. September 23rd, 1927. Wilbur Bullet Rogan and lefty Carl Glass combined for a 6-hit, 4-0 win over Enid of the Northwest League in Enid, Oklahoma. Boy, that was a place the Monarchs liked to stop all the time. I'm clearing my throat here, but with all these touring and everything, I'm always congested right now. So anyway, Enid, Oklahoma. The Monarchs went there all the time. It was out in Oklahoma. The first night baseball game the Kansas City Monarchs ever played in 1930 was played in Enid, Oklahoma. They played that game against Phillips University. Excuse me for a second. So anyway, so this was a town they went to often. Now, I also mentions Lefty Glass. Now, Lefty Glass is mostly associated with the Memphis Red Sox, but he did play for the Kansas City Monarchs just a brief period. And so the Monarchs didn't have a lot of left-handed pitchers during this period in the 1920s. I think they had a guy named Homer Bartlett out of Centralia, Missouri. He was a lefty, but most of the Monarchs pitching was done by righties. They didn't have a lot of lefties, so they would bring on people like Carl Glass to go out and barnstorm with them. So this is in September, the end of the 1927 season. So, and they're playing at Enid, Oklahoma. So they would leave the league and they would go out and play. So that gives you another idea. So let's jump to another one. We're going to jump up to 1932. So this is September 23rd, 1932. The Pittsburgh Crawfords defeated the minor league All-Stars 11-4 at Pittsburgh's Greenlee Field. And Oscar Charleston and Josh Gibson slammed home runs. Now, I don't know how big Greenlee Field was. I'm sure that if I dig deep enough, I can find that information. I will tell you this. Why did Gus Greenlee, who was the owner of the Crawfords, you know, he actually took over ownership of the team toward the end of 1931. So why would he build his own park? The Braves used Forbes Field all the time. Well, because he didn't want to have to deal with Composey. That was the deal. Composey had an agreement with Barney Dreyfuss, who was the owner of the Pittsburgh team. Now, what's interesting is, the first time I heard about Barney Dreyfuss, I was probably about 18, 19 years old. I was working at like a five and dime store, the Duckwild alcohol stores out in Kansas, and there was a guy used to come, and he would always bring this photo developing there and stuff. He found out I liked baseball, so he would come and he would talk about people that he's seen and everything. And he always talked about Barney Dreyfuss. And I didn't know who Barney Dreyfuss was, but he would always say Barney Dreyfuss, and he was a German Jew. That's one of the things I learned from that guy. And so anyway, later on, I do start to learn more about Barney Dreyfuss. And he was good friends with Cumberland Posey. So they entered into an agreement that Posey could play in Forbes Field. Now, if any other African-American team wanted to play in Forbes Field, they had to go through Posey, because Barney Dreyfuss had given him that kind of authority to say who could come into the park and play. And so when Gus Greenlee started going strongly, he realized that, hey, I'm not going to be able to break this relationship, and so I'm not going to be able to draw. I can't play in Forbes Field because Composey can block me. So he decided to build his own park. So eventually, by building his own park, the Grays ended up having to come over there and play. Now, what's interesting is, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure Barney Dreyfuss dies in 1931. So that changed that whole relationship. But by then, Gus Greenlee has his field. And so that's Gus Greenlee, and that's that whole history there. So anyway, we're going to jump and go to a couple more. Let's see. I'm going to jump through this pretty quick. I have Jesse Lamar Gonder, catcher, made his major league debut with the New York Yankees. That's interesting. That was September 23rd, 1960. And most people will remember another guy who was an outfielder / catcher named Elston Howard, who made his debut, I think, 1955 with the New York Yankees. So I guess they were looking for backup catchers for Yogi Berra. How about that? So anyway, he comes on and makes his debut 1960. And then also, we're going to go to now jump to September 23rd, 1962. And on this date, September 23rd, Maury Wills broke Ty Cobb's record of 97 stolen bases in a single season. And Wills would finish with 104 stolen bases for the year, and then he would go on to win the National League MVP. Had a chance to meet Maury Wills. Actually, I got him to autograph a few things for me, so I got a chance to shake the hand of a National League MVP. More than once, I actually got a chance to meet Joe Morgan too later on, shook his hand. So I remember I used to go to, when I was touring one time, I was in like Marceline, Missouri or something like this, and the guy stops me and he says, hey, come on and shake the hand of the man who shook the hand of Babe Ruth. And it turns out that when he was a kid, he was in the hospital, and Babe Ruth came by the hospital, he shook his hand. So by the time I run into this guy, he's like 90 years old, and he can say, hey, shake the hand of the hand that shook Babe Ruth's hand. So I was happy to shake his hand. It was somewhere down, I think it was Marceline. It was right on that highway that goes Marceline and it goes into Hannibal. But guys, I've appeared a lot of places. I would venture to say that in 45 years, I don't know anyone who's made more personal appearances than myself. I know from 2014 to 2018, I completed a 200-city tour. So if you can just imagine that, lots of activity I've been involved with over the years. So anyway, yeah, so I'm looking at Maury Wills, and that's quite an accomplishment. And to show you that the stolen base and breaking Ty Cobb's record was so big that he ended up winning the MVP. That's quite an accomplishment. So that's Maury Wills. And some people will remember his son, who played for the Texas Rangers, Bump Wills. I had a chance to see him play too. So met the father and the son. So we'll go from there. And then the last one I'm going to finish, I'm going to jump to 1978. 1978, September 23rd, 1978. Lyman Bostock, outfielder for the California Angels, is murdered in Gary, Indiana. Man, I remember that. I remember that so well. Bostock was one of the players who had gotten one of the early players who had gone for free agency and gotten a big contract. And he started off hitting so poorly that he actually tried to give the money back. Boy, nobody's going to try to do that today. But anyway, he was a good player. His father was a former Negro League player. I had a chance to meet him too. Actually, before he passed away, he used to make bats. And so there's probably someone out there with a Lyman Bostock made the daddy bat. So there's probably someone out there. So anyway, Lyman Bostock, I was in 1978, I was 22 years old. And when this happened, I remember I sat down and wrote a letter to the Bostock family. And about 2 weeks later, after the funeral was over, I received a letter back from his wife thanking me for taking the time to write that letter. And it was on the funeral home stationery. And so I have that in my collection. And I've never gotten rid of it. And it's a personal piece that, you know, I just sit down and decide to write. I've been a baseball fan for a long time, and I've, you know, seen many things happen, but that one touched me and made me sit down and write a letter. I've written many letters because of things like that over the years. I can even remember, I have a thank you from the White House. When Ronald Reagan, someone tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan, he was in the hospital, I sent him a letter. And then I've got a response back from the White House thanking me for sending him a letter. So I didn't vote for him, but I was, you know, I hate to see anything like that happen to anybody. So I wrote him a letter, telling him to get well soon, and they responded. So I have that in my collection too. So it's been a great journey, and I'm going to close for tonight. This is going to be a short broadcast, you know, because I can go on and on and on. And of course, what I do is different than what a lot of people are doing. Now, I've noticed now, since I started doing these, there's other people now trying to put this day in Black baseball history. But the difference is this. I started gathering this information, a lot of it, many years ago. And so, like, if I'm going to talk about a game, there's usually something interesting about that game. So, because there's games played every day in Negro League baseball history, local, national, just, and it doesn't have to be the league, because you notice, like the West Virginia Wonders, they weren't in the league. And, but I like to find games with big scores like that. And so in this particular game, we got 40-6. That interests me. A lot of times I find games that ended in an hour, 10 minutes, or less than an hour. I find games like that. I try to find games with guys with multiple home runs. And so I have, it's a method to my presentation. And so you got guys now who are trying to do the same thing, but they don't do their scholarship, guys. So if you want genuine information, this is where you want to be. And then the other thing is, because of my 45 years of doing this history, see, like I said, I can tell you about, Maury Wills, because I talked to him, and like I knew Bullet Rogan's son. I knew Richard Whitworth's son. I knew his granddaughter. And so I knew of these people, and this is one thing that people can't touch. So go ahead, guys, copy all you want, but know that the original is right here. And this is Phil Dixon's This Day in Black Baseball History. We're going to sign off for tonight. I'll be back. And hopefully, when I quit touring, I'll get a chance to do this on a regular basis, maybe at the same time every night. So, all right, guys, thank you for joining in. It's been great. And we're going to get out here in less than 20 minutes. So thank you, and I'll be back tomorrow. You have a nice day.